One of the more supposedly powerful pieces of evidence offered in favor of Jesus' tomb being empty has been that the gospel authors wouldn't have invented women as the discoverers of the empty tomb. Here is apologist Dr. William Lane Craig making that very case.
The tomb was discovered empty by women. The fact that women's testimony was less trustworthy than men's testimony in first century Israel counts in favor of the women's role in the discovery of the empty tomb. According to the first century Jewish historian Josephus, the testimony of women was regarded as so unreliable in Jewish society that it should not even be admitted into a Jewish court of law. Any later legendary story would surely have made male disciples, like Peter and John, discover the empty tomb. The fact that it is women whose testimony was regarded as worthless, who are the chief witnesses to and the discoverers of the empty tomb, is most plausibly explained by the awkward and embarrassing fact that they were the discoverers of the empty tomb, and the gospel writers faithfully record what for them was a rather embarrassing fact.
Now, as Christian apologists, I think we need to be a bit careful here. There are some reasonable alternative explanations for why the Gospels report the discovery of the empty tomb by women. For example, skeptical New Testament scholar Bart Ehrman notes that women were particularly well represented in early Christian communities, and so it's at least a bit plausible that they created the oral traditions regarding the discovery of the empty tomb. Ehrman also says that preparing bodies for burial was commonly the work of women, not men, and so why wouldn't the stories tell of women who went to prepare the body? Moreover, if in the stories they are the ones who went to the tomb to anoint the body, naturally they would have been the ones who found the tomb empty. Finally, women could provide some legal testimony under Jewish law if no male witnesses were available. Josephus even appeals to women as his only witnesses of what happened at the Battle of Gamala. Now, I'm not trying to burst anyone's bubble here, nor am I saying that nothing can be said in response to Ehrman. I'm just saying that we need to be careful to not oversell our case. I still think that the story about the women being the main discoverers of the empty tomb lends support to the Christian's argument, but it's not exactly the slam dunk that a few people think it is. That said, I think we can do a bit better than the standard argument. There are other markers that the story of the women is based on eyewitness testimony. For starters, the account of the women discovering the empty tomb seemed to be independent. Luke 24:10 says, "Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary the mother of James and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles." Critics like Ehrman will say this contradicts John 21, which only tells about Mary Magdalene's discovery of the empty tomb. But if we read the very next verse in John, we see that it says, "So she, Mary, ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, 'They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him.'" So what's the deal with this "we" talk? This incidentally indicates that there were other women there. John's report of these words shows that he's also aware of this fact, even though he isn't explicit about it. This indicates that the accounts are independent while being easy to reconcile. Okay, so put on your thinking caps now and follow me closely here, because here's where it gets really interesting, but we're going to have to get in some nitty-gritty details. Matthew and Mark also appear to be independent of Luke when it comes to the women's discovery of the empty tomb. Luke indicates that in Luke 8:1-3, some of the women followed Jesus from Galilee, including Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's household manager. This detail is coincidentally and unintentionally confirmed in Matthew 14:1-2. This sheds light on how the author of Matthew's gospel might have known what Herod said to his servants. The names given in Luke's list are Mary, Joanna, and Susanna, as well as many others. Mark tells us that the women who were looking on from a distance at the crucifixion and lists Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James the younger and of Joseph and Salome. These names partially overlap with those given in Luke 8, but there's no mention in Mark of Joanna or Susanna, and Luke doesn't mention Mary the mother of James or Salome. So it doesn't look like Luke added the passage in chapter 8 in order to put women in a place earlier in Jesus' ministry to fit the story together with Matthew and Mark concerning the women at the cross, because the names are only partially the same. It's likely that Luke would have included Mary, the mother of James, Salome, and probably excluded Susanna if he made up these verses in chapter 8 on the basis of Mark's mention. Luke himself mentions that the women who came from Galilee at the cross and burial, but he doesn't even name any of them there. As a result, both accounts confirm independently that there were women who started following Jesus in Galilee and who served as his helpers until the very end. In Luke 24:6-10, the angels tell the women at the empty tomb, "Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee." This makes it clear that these women were personally with Jesus in Galilee and heard what he said there. When Luke names the different women who brought the disciples the news of the empty tomb and the message of the angel, he names Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Joanna, and says that there were other women there as well. Once again, he doesn't seem to be trying to reproduce his own list from chapter 8, for Mary the mother of James was not on the list and Susanna isn't mentioned in Luke 24:10. He's also not copying Mark's list of the women at the cross, nor Mark's list of women who came to the tomb, since Salome isn't included in Luke's list and Joanna, who is unique to Luke, is not included in Mark's list. So here's my point. Luke's gospel seems to look more like reality than literary contrivance. This story has the ring of truth.